We are going to talk about the international forum which happened yesterday. We had about 88 delegates and about another 80 people in the room for a discussion that was 3 to 4 hours with a few breaks in between that went over a sequence of things that we talk about. This was the third annual international forum that we have held that is cross-sector and cross-industry. And it was, tremendously useful in helping us move forward some of the more pertinent things that involve bilateral and multilateral collaboration and in the industry moving forward. So we're going to do a little readout from that session in a short period of time. So I would like to ask my fellow panelists to come forward. So over the past 2 years, in 2022 and in 2023, we have had an international forum that was conducted at the Quantum World Congress. And in 2024, we added a 0.5, a mid-year summit that happened earlier this year. And the focus has been essentially the same type of conversations that we are retreading from year to year that involve usually about 6 topics of discussion at each of these forums that we go through specific topics and agendas that mean something to the like-minded countries and the industries that are in the space. So this is going to be the readout from it. So perhaps as we start, I can ask the panelists to kind of do a little introductions to themselves, and then we'll get into the questions. Johann?
Sure. Hi. Great to be back, George. I'm Johann Silva, so I sit in the Office for Quantum in the Department for Science, Innovation and Technology in the UK government.
Hi, my name is Mika Takagi. I represent the Japanese Ministry of Economy and also its funding agency called NEDO that covers clean energy and critical technologies here in Washington, D.C.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jhalak Gupta. I'm part of the Ministry of Economic Affairs in the Netherlands, and we hold a mandate for quantum innovation, and I'm representing the Dutch government today.
Thank you, panelists. One thing to kind of as a preamble to the conversation is the Enduring International Forum it serves as a public-private collaborator for a discussion. But the 3 kind of key points that we have settled on as what we are using to drive the value of the conversation. The first one is accelerate global partnerships and cross-sector, cross-disciplinary collaboration to harness the potential of quantum technologies. The second one is anticipate and mitigate potential risks, and we'll discuss this in a little bit. And the third one is barriers and breaking through those barriers that undermine the development, commercialization, and adoption of quantum. So these 3 kind of overarching themes tend to color a lot of the conversations that we've had at the international forums and at multiple sessions that are in smaller venues during the course of the last 3 years. So with that, the 6 topics that we discussed this year, the first one I will kind of key up is sustaining investment and increasing value through collaborative investments. And what this really is trying to drive at is there is not enough money, and there is a lot of technologies that need to be explored, a lot of use cases that need to explode, and very key, there's not enough talent to do everything, everywhere, by everybody. So how do we kind of work together better to collaborate on the investments that are being put into what, the broad swath of what we might call quantum, and how that might, help us accelerate and scale what the market could become. So if I could ask Johann to take a first cut.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think the thrust of this conversation was what is the role of government? I think we had quite a heated discussion, that we generally agreed that it's not the government's job to pick winners or losers, but rather to create that right environment for companies to thrive. And we agreed that was a global endeavor. There were obviously some differences in the way that government and industry view things. So our KPIs are generally not the same, for example. But we heard about new models for working with industry. Heard about some limited companies being set up in coordination with universities, for example, to deal with IP issues. We talked about developing value chains, opportunities for funds to team up to make global investments, And obviously, investing in workforce was a really key part of it as well. So I think, yeah, quite an interesting discussion about how government really tries to play that role.
Yeah, you do bring up a good point. I mean, there was heated discussions, I guess, with regard to the investment side of it between VCs, private industry investing themselves, user group communities, aerospace, defense, life sciences companies investing in it versus government investing in it. And where does the philosophy lie between those four major sectors, and there are many other nuances between them, on what the focus should be. And Johann's point about not picking winners and losers, I think in general was shared by most governments. The VCs would like government to get more involved to help them mitigate their risk. And then the industries have all levels of maturity with what happens across the board, I think, was kind of like the general consensus that came out within it. Obviously, there's not an answer as to what is the best way. And I think the other nuance was every government, depending on its structure, had a slightly different variation on what is more important and what is less important from an investment perspective. Jhalak or Mika-san, anything to add to that?
Well, I think you covered everything, but I kind of remembered last year's conversation because I've been here for 3 years in a row, to the international panel. And last year was about how the VC funding kind of declined from year 2022 because of the hype that we had, and people started realizing, that quantum is not as quick as we thought. But this year, I think there was more like kind of the conversation got deeper down into how we can actually use the VC money and the government money maybe together as like public-private partnership or collaboration between the hubs regionally or at national level or international level. So I felt it was proceeding much more than last year's just kind of shocking conversation.
Just to add to that, this is the first time I'm attending this Congress, and it's really interesting to see that the conversation has evolved so much. But also when we talk about attracting private investors, and as you also rightly pointed out, George, that it's important that the investors see also the government making big steps. And I think one of the bigger steps for the government is to provide a clear vision or a well-thought-of vision when it comes to quantum. For example, in the Netherlands, we have made a national technology strategy about all the key technologies and also quantum, stating what our ambitions are, where do we want to be in 2035, and really creating a pathway forward, having many key elements such as talking about facilities, talking about talent, also private investment. So it kind of gives a clear vision also in terms to build their own ecosystem. We are a very ecosystem development approach, and that is also how we support, for example, a program like Quantum Delta with about 600 million euros. So it's important for governments to also provide that vision for private players to chime in.
That's excellent, which kind of segues into some of the conversation on the second topic, which was scaling commercialization opportunities itself. And Quantum Delta Netherlands does such a wonderful job of mixing the two. I think, given the award that you guys just received, it really kind of exemplifies that kind of proper mix between the two to kind of support but not put your finger on the scale, I think. So, is there any kind of lessons learned that you might have had that would have kind of come from that journey that you have been on?
Yeah, so this public-private partnership that you mentioned is extremely important. We call it actually the triple helix. It's the government, private sector, and the institutes that are together collaborating for quantum. One thing that we have seen is that also there needs to be coherence within the government on this topic. So that's why we really make a good effort of getting all departments, whether it's education, who can also incentivize this partnership really well, the Department of Infrastructure, getting them all involved and being on one page in order to solve these issues if we see in public-private partnerships. That has been extremely important.
Mika-san and Johann, other thoughts from the discussions yesterday on this commercialization topic?
Yeah, people, were saying that we need the KPI and also we need to kind of to have good example of the use case. It doesn't have to be many, but a few, I think, that would come earlier should be better. So there was kind of hope among everybody about that. And for that, so Japan is also starting what's called G-Quad, which is the center for use case creation. And we already have International Association of Quantum, which consists not only with the quantum computing companies, but the user companies. So we are hoping to work on that as quick as possible. And it doesn't have to be quantum computer only. It could be combined with high-performance computer, which was raised by a few people, also including, I think, Microsoft's presentation just today. So yeah, that's one thing I kind of took away from that conversation.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, completely agree. Just from a UK perspective, again, we've announced the next phase of our national program. We've announced 5 new hubs. We've announced 5 long-term missions around compute, sensing, quantum healthcare, and all of those will continue to be delivered as industry, academia, all of our national labs, and all of our broader stakeholders. They will continue to be built to encourage investment, private investment and collaboration between all of those stakeholders. So.
And these 3 kind of, country-specific kind of answers to that, I think, was shared in general by almost all of the other delegations there on what that means, which then kind of led to the next conversation, which was around what does industry do to kind of get involved and their, cooperation, co-innovation work. And when I say industry, it's meaning less the builders of the technology as much as the users and the buyers of the technology downstream. And one of the big nuances that came up in that was around what do we even call quantum? Because the question of a quantum computing stack and a story is very different than networks, very different than sensors. So there was some level of discussion with regard to, when we say quantum and the national strategies, and I know some of your individual countries' national strategies pay attention to this, but it tends to kind of get lost in the mix in the general conversation on quantum. And if I could ask you all of you to kind of add some color to it.
Sorry, I didn't hear the question.
This nuance between when we say quantum, it's not just quantum computing, it's not just quantum sensing, and they are distinct by themselves between the 3, essentially 4 stacks of technologies, 4 stacks of ecosystems, 4 stacks of how the money flows, 4 stacks of maturity as to when they will hit the market. Mm-hmm. So part of the discussion I think that had come up in the industry and sector-led collaboration was, should we treat them separately? Yeah. By combining them, are we doing a disservice to the scaling and the accelerating?
Yeah. Well, I would say that that's definitely one of the fundamental questions that our government is trying to answer. We see that there is a different pace for all these 3 domains, and that is not already reflected in our policy well enough. So we have this question in mind, and we are really working towards that. And we hope to have an answer on that as soon as possible, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to recognize that in the journey. So, we've set these 5 ambitious goals. In 10 years, we want to deploy quantum health sensing technologies into our National Health Service, or we want to have a quantum navigation system deployed onto an aircraft. Those things will treat quantum differently. You may not care about the quantumness of your sensor in healthcare, but rather what it will allow you to do. And health providers will simply care about what it allows you to do. They don't care about the quantumness of it. So, those things, whereas, if you're thinking about clocks or navigation, does it give you better capability than you had before? Or is it cheaper? Does it match current capability? So I think those missions will be living, a living program that will adapt in the way you've said to what is needed, what the key issues are in order to get to that outcome. So I think you're right in that sense. those things will need to be treated differently, and they'll need to evolve in a way that fits from our perspective, that ambitious goal.
Yeah, and there was a healthy debate in the room with regard to is setting targets that are mission-oriented to kind of do X by 2030 and there'll be money put to solving it, whether quantum is one of the tools or all of the tools is dependent on what the answer is, because from a mission perspective, you need the mission to be solved. So is that a good way to go, and putting dates is a good way to go, or should the focus be on specific types of technologies? So that is a very healthy debate that happened in the room as well yesterday, which again, no answers for anything, but that's part of the ongoing drive.
True, but I think fundamental to that is that collaboration with other countries. Whatever technology, whatever way we choose, we have to keep cross-border collaboration in mind and create our ecosystem in that way that we can really find the link with other ecosystems pretty well. Again, that ecosystem-driven approach in which you have these institutes, you have these knowledge centers working closely together with SMEs, and that are very open to also working with other ecosystems as well. I think that's fundamental.
Mika-san?
Yeah, I just want to add one thing to that point. So there's ecosystem for research phase, to collaborate among the researchers and universities and research institutions. But there was a lot of discussion around supply chain as well. So ecosystem could be the supply chain for the development phase. And since quantum technology is a platform technology that could be turned into many different things, including dual use, I think it's very important to have the collaboration among the allies for supply chain ecosystem. And that topic was raised many times yesterday.
I know it's really difficult to condense 100 people talking over 4 hours down to 20 minutes, but I do want to end on workforce and talent, which was peppered all the way through all of the conversations with it. Every aspect of everything we talked about had a workforce element to it. And it's not just workforce with PhDs and master's students driving the core of the science and the engineering and the technology. It was all of the other assets that is required to kind of support an ecosystem that's developing. And one of the really cool things is we were lucky enough to have a few high school students in the room who kind of stood up and participated in the conversation as we try to create awareness for the types of careers and jobs that are in quantum. We need lawyers, we need all kinds of kind of people in the space who know enough of the technology to be able to help craft policy, to do regulations, standards. So it was a very broad kind of conversation with regard to workforce. So maybe in the last couple of minutes that we have, I can just ask you to say a couple of words on workforce each, and Johann, maybe I can start with you.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely critical. We've announced 5 centres of doctoral training. We've also got a skills task force that we've established. I think this all ties into some of the other parts of that discussion we've been having around supply chains and essentially secure innovation. We want to think about the principles of using that talent across our R&D space, our industry. We have from our perspective a sort of front door into advice and the way in which universities can seek advice on secure international collaboration, working with companies, supporting all of that sort of workforce and international aspects of what is a small international talent pool. So we're a really key part of that international question as well.
So, Mika-san?
What was the question? International workforce?
On workforce and talent, just perspectives from what happened in the room. Any thoughts on it?
Yeah, it's very important, and I think every country, thinks it's a problem. But again, I think it's really important to collaborate with other countries about workforce development. And also, I would like to mention that there was some high school students attending the discussion yesterday, which was really encouraging for us that we are doing something that could leave a legacy for those generations. And I'm really respectful that you have been inviting those high school students, and they've been asking us what quantum can do for their generation. And so we really have to think about kind of the global talent pool, but also at the same time we have to think about like younger generation coming into this quantum world to be trained and to be leading the technology in the future.
Thank you, Ms. I'm told we're out of time. Jhalak, you can bring us home.
Yeah, I completely agree with the speakers, but I also think that it's very important to look at the knowledge in other key technologies. So for example, if we look at photonics, see if we can have some kind of spillover in terms of talent to quantum. I think that's the very efficient way of structuring also the workforce problem. You're still able to tackle it a bit. And within Netherlands, we, for example, have our 5 technical hubs in like a 2-hour drive distance. And in these hubs, there's research done on quantum, but also on other technologies. And the fact that we can transfer this knowledge pretty well between the hubs, between technologies, is a great asset. So I think that kind of approach really helps in building further on the work talent and workforce.
Thank you, Jhalak. Thank you to the 3 of you and to the many delegates who participated in the conversation yesterday. Thank you, everybody.